Reformed Church.
And when we are strong in heart, we recognize the fact that there is nothing in this world that we submit unto, right? And that the only one that we actually submit unto is unto God. In other words, that we well, I guess that's really the best word. I was going to say something a little different, but that we submit ourselves to God, right? That we would not be brought under the power of anything, because we are already the Lord's and the Lord is ours. So He is the one that has power over this body, right? He is the one, and in the same way that I think I mentioned last service, the way it says that, just as a man has power over his wife's body and a wife has power over a man's body, that's so the Lord has power over this body, right? That this body is the Lord. So he of course, he's one that we want Him to have free reign and free course with this body, free reign and free course in our hearts and in our minds. And, and in thinking about that, what got me thinking quite a bit about a strong heart and a strong mind. And you hear the Lord say that to Joshua many times. He told him, be strong and courageous, or be strong and brave, right? But He's not talking about his actions. He's talking about Joshua's mind and his heart, right? What he was getting ready to do and to bring people into the land, right, was not something that he needed to be strong physically for. It's something that he needed to be strong in heart, right? Because it was actually the Lord that would do it, right? It was actually the Lord that would do it. So he didn't need to be strong physically for the Lord to do something, right? That sounds a little silly, right? That he would need to be strong physically, right? Or brave in his actions, right? In order for the Lord to be able to do something, right? The Lord doesn't need human strength in order to do something, just as much as the Lord didn't need, the prophets, track, his track record, literally track running, right? He didn't need him to be a track star in order to get him to beat a chariot to the king's home, right? The Lord does not require the strength of men to move by His power, right? So when you think of that, when the Lord says to be strong in heart, right? To be strong or to be very courageous, like He was telling Joshua many times, He's talking about us having a strong heart, right? A heart that recognizes when you're being told something. You know the difference between deception and truth, right? A heart that when you're in a circumstance, a heart that can properly discern the situation, right? A heart that can properly discern the circumstance, right? A heart that is, a person that is not strong in heart, right, can be an individual that if he's not found in a certain atmosphere, right, he goes a little nuts, right? If you're not held back somehow, that if you don't put guards on your life, that you're like the beast will come out, right? That was the really horrible thinking that I used to have years and years ago. Like there was this battle going on the inside of me and in my mind, and if I didn't cage the beast, bad things would happen. That's why you have to keep yourself under constant observation and keep guards around you and watch this and guard the other thing, right? All the time, not really understanding that it was the Lord. It wasn't the Lord, it was the Lord. It was the Lord that I wanted Him to guard my heart, right? He's the one that I wanted to give access into my mind, to make my heart strong, so that I would have strength of mind, right? So I would have a strong heart in Jesus, right? So let me just show you something real quick. In Ephesians chapter 3 and verse number 16, if we can. Let me go there myself. This is out of the King James Version. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 16. That He would grant you, this is Paul praying for the Ephesians, for those of the Ephesian church, that He would grant you, that God would grant you, according to the riches of His glory, to be strengthened. Now, here's an interesting thing. He's praying for believers, right? And he says to them that He would grant you, according to the riches of His glory, to be strengthened with might by His Spirit in the inner man. This is applicable whether you are a believer or whether you're not a believer, right? If you're not a believer, or whether you are a believer, strength of heart is still what's needed, right? In other words, if you have the Lord, you need to give the Lord access to be able to renew your mind. And if you don't have the Lord, then you need to be able to begin to learn Jesus, to begin to put faith in Jesus, so the Lord can begin to renew your mind, so that you can have a strong heart. So the end result of a believer or an unbeliever is to be able to come to a place of surety in Christ, right, where we know the Lord and we're strong in heart. So he says that he would grant you according to the riches of his glory. Now, what he's talking about in a believer's case, right, we have and possess the glory of God on the inside of us. We have that, right? We have been glorified. As Christ has been glorified, so we have been glorified. In other words, in our spirit, we possess the glory of God. Now, our physical body has not fully received the glory of God, but we have the glory of God on the inside of us. And that glory that is in you, can bring that glory, right, into your heart and mind. In other words, it can strengthen the glory that is in you. The Spirit of God that is within you can strengthen your heart and mind. In other words, the inner man here is making reference to your heart, to your mind, that he can make your mind strong. The cool thing there is that if you really think about it, he's talking about the teacher that's on the inside of you. He's talking about the one that illuminates. He's talking about the one that lightens your mind, that gives light to your heart. You know, in the same way in Genesis chapter 1, it's really cool that in the very first book of the Bible, and in the very first chapter, and in the very first verses of the Bible, the gospel is preached so clearly there, right? That the Lord saw the earth, that it was void, that it was dark, that it was empty, right? And that out of darkness, right, he brought light into the world, right? That he said, let there be light. So that which was dark, that which was for applicability to us, right? That which was dark, that which was without understanding, received light, right? Received revelation, received the knowledge of Christ, right? So it's really cool to see that how out of the glory that we possess on the inside of us, the Lord can take the parts of our minds and of our thinking that are dark, things where we lack understanding, places in our hearts and mind that don't possess the light of Christ, the light of the gospel. In other words, the knowledge about Jesus, that God can take those places and illuminate and bring light, that he could light up your mind, right? That the Lord can light up your eyes, that he can make it so that in places where you didn't see the Lord, now you see him clearly. In places where things seemed hard for you to comprehend or hard for you to understand, now things seem very clear and very plain, right? He says that he would grant you according to the riches of his glory, which are on the inside of you, for you to be strengthened with might, with power by his Spirit in your inner man, right? By his Spirit in your inner man, that it is by the Spirit of God on the inside of you that he is the one that teaches. He's the one that illuminates, right? He's the one that testifies of himself, right? That it is Jesus on the inside of you, right? The glory of God. It is Jesus on the inside of you. It's the Spirit of Christ in you that teaches you Jesus, that provides, that gives you the ability to be able to see him. Like he on the inside of you, that has filled you on the inside of you, right? That has made you brand new with his glory. He's the one that teaches your mind and your heart in order to illuminate your mind to be able to see him. In other words, he manifests himself to you. He teaches you himself, right? He teaches you himself. He says that according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might by his Spirit in the inner man. And then he kind of defines that when he's talking about you being strong in mind, right? Being strengthened with power by his Spirit in the inner man, that you would have a strong mind, right? That you would be able to have the power of God in your heart. It's interesting that a lot of times when we talk about the power of God, we talk about work of power outwardly, right? But a lot of times we don't think about power and strength as being in our mind and in our heart, right? We don't think many times about a strong heart and a strong mind, right? But it is really from a mind and a heart that is strengthened, from a mind and a heart that is strong, is where is how the power of God is manifest, right? It's how we receive of that fullness of God on the inside of us manifest to our body, right? He says that Christ may dwell in your heart by faith, that he would kind of reside in your heart by faith, that he would be present in your heart by faith, that the knowledge of Christ would be prevalent in your mind and in your heart, right? We were talking about how, and this is something I'm going to tell you that it just has been very significant to me. It's been something that has stood out quite a bit in these last several weeks about, just that the example that I had given you about how, you could go to a doctor, and a doctor who is educated in the world and not educated in Christ, right? Educated in the world and not educated in Christ would speak to you from the world's perspective, obviously, right? I'm not saying that the doctor would be, as an evil person wishing you harm, right? They think in their way that what they're doing is helping you, that they are giving, right? Doctors do offer, for the most part, temporary help for people. But the point is, though, they can only speak to you from where their education comes from, right? And the education of a doctor comes from the world, not from God, for the most part, right? So when they speak to you from that perspective, they're going to speak to you carnally, and they're going to tell you, you got 3 months to live. But the interesting thing, the thing that's been just a very prevalent thing in my mind lately has been, that if we were to allow the Lord to be the one that's teaching us, when Christ is dwelling in our hearts by faith, when Christ is prevalent in our mind, when the knowledge of Jesus is prevalent in our mind and our heart, right? We should consult the knowledge of Christ. We should acknowledge every good thing that is in us, right? Acknowledging the truth that is on the inside of us, and being attentive to the things that we have heard and learned before, right? That we would be people that listen to the Lord, right? And even allow, obviously, like we were speaking before, allowing your brothers and sisters in Christ to also encourage you in the same way, right? And if you were to consult the Lord within you, if you were to be mindful of the things that you have been taught, if you would allow other people that have a renewed mind to be able to speak to you from a godly perspective, you would sense a disagreement between what that doctor is telling you that's been educated in the world and what it is that God says, right? So you would hear that, and you would have a strong mind against what you're hearing in the world. And again, this is not a thing about, that people are just wishing you ill, that people are just desiring, horrible things to happen to you, right? I mean, there are people in the world that may have bad desires toward you, but I'm talking about a physician. I'm talking about a doctor who's just educated in the world and is just speaking to you from that perspective. We need to have minds that are strong to be able to properly discern the things that you're being told, right? Discernment is really about that, right? Discernment is really being able to understand first and foremost what God says and weigh everything else that you hear against what God is saying, right? That's how you properly discern a situation. That's how you properly discern the state that you're in. That's how you properly discern, that you have need to grow in a certain area, right? Because when you are freaking out about a situation, right? When you are just things, you're just not making good decisions, your judgment is not there, right? And then you hear someone tell you the truth, you hear someone encourage you in the truth, what happens is, that helps you recognize, you're like, wow, I was thinking wrong. Right? Like, wow, okay, I was thinking wrong. I wasn't thinking properly. I wasn't thinking correctly. But don't think that because you've acknowledged that you were thinking wrong, that all of a sudden your mind's renewed, right? The reason why you understood that you were thinking incorrectly is because the Lord corrected your thinking. But the fact that He's corrected your thinking doesn't mean your mind is renewed. That is just an indication, right? That you're growing, and you need to continue to grow in the knowledge of what He's done. You need to continually be, He says, strengthened with power by His Spirit on the inside of you. That the glory that you have in you needs to move upstairs, right? That the glory which is in you needs to be moved up, right? And then you will judge appropriately as God judges, and you will speak the way he speaks, and you will think the way the Lord thinks, right? So when we think about strength and we think about power, how cool is it to be able to think like, Lord, you're making me strong of heart, right? Which is a mature person, right? As you're maturing, right? Doesn't mean that you're just getting older, right? Because you could be getting older and still think like a child. But to be able to be strong in heart means that you are maturing. When we talk about growing, right, is that we are maturing in our heart. Your heart is growing stronger. You're being strengthened in your mind and in your heart. You're being strengthened in your mind. So what he says is that as Christ dwells in your heart by faith, as you grow in the knowledge of Christ, he says that you're being rooted, that the definition of that, for Christ to dwell in your heart by faith, is that you become rooted and grounded in the love of God for you. You're becoming rooted and grounded. So doesn't that give you the same picture, right? When we talk about being strong, and then you think about being rooted and grounded, right? Is that you're not quickly moved, right? When you're rooted and grounded, you're not quickly moved away. You're not quickly tossed. Right? You're not quickly tossed. He says, being rooted and grounded in love, he said that you may be able to comprehend with all saints, because this is something that is needful for every single individual, right? He says that you may comprehend with all the saints, what is the breadth and the length and the depth, to know the love of Christ that passes knowledge, that you, it says, might be filled with all the fullness of God. That you may be filled with all the fullness of God. So what that's talking there is that as we mature in the knowledge of Christ, as our heart is made strong and strengthened, we see the glory of God, right? Because he's saying that to know the love of God which passes knowledge, that you might be filled with all the fullness of God. Obviously he's not talking about us being filled with all the fullness of God in us, because we already have the fullness of God on the inside of us. But what he's talking about is being filled with all the fullness of God. He's talking about the fact that you're going to see the glory of God, that which is in you, right, comes up here, that this glory, right, glories or lights up your heart and your mind, and then the glory of God is seen, right? You're filled with all the fullness of God, right? So you see, if that which is in us, if the light that is in us, if the light that is in us lights up our mind, it is that light or that knowledge, that clarity of sight of being able to see Jesus that brings about the glory that is on the inside of us. You know, isn't it interesting that the Bible uses interchangeably when it says that the earth will be filled with the glory of God, and it also talks about the earth being filled with the knowledge of God, right? In other words, when the glory that is in us fills this earth, it's filling this earth because it's already filled your heart and your mind, right? It doesn't skip your brain, right? The earth is not going to be filled with the glory of God until this is filled with the glory of God, right? When your mind is filled with the glory of God, then you will light up those things around you. The things around you, right, can receive from the glory that you possess. But the first step in seeing the glory of God is seeing the glory of God, right? The first step in you seeing the glory of God outwardly is for you to see the glory of God, right? In Corinthians 3:18, right? That we behold the glory of God as in a mirror. So what you're beholding is in you. You know, it's almost like you're looking down, right? Looking within yourself, beholding the glory that you have on the inside of you. I'll show you an example of that again in Ephesians 1:17. Ephesians 1:17 says that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give to you the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him. And you know what? I have an idea. I had wondered in the past, like, Lord, like, why is it that you're telling the people that have the Spirit of God that they would receive the spirit of wisdom, right? Don't they have the spirit of wisdom already, right? But there's, you know, I won't go into it right now, but he's telling them that they would receive wisdom and revelation from the Spirit of God that is in them, that they would receive that wisdom and revelation. In other words, what he's talking about revelation is that it's no longer dark, right? It's no longer hidden from them. Now it's revealed. It's no longer dark. Now it's lit. Right? In other words, that a heart and mind where their eyes were darkened, that their eyes were being short-sighted, that their eyes were being blinded by something, right? Blinded by the knowledge of this world, or blinded from the things of this earth. It says it says that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may give unto you the spirit of wisdom and revelation in the knowledge of him. So again, the Spirit of God on the inside of you, right, is revealing or uncovering, manifesting himself, right? Jesus said, I will manifest myself to you. I will manifest myself to you. So he's saying by the spirit of wisdom and revelation and knowledge of him, so that what? So that the eyes of your understanding, in other words, your mind, may be enlightened, lit, right? May be made strong. When your heart is enlightened, your heart is strong, right? When your heart is enlightened, your heart is strong. So you are then being, as the Lord encouraged Joshua to be strong and to be very courageous, right? He was to bring the people in. You can't bring people anywhere. You can't lead people into that which is Christ, unless you yourself are strong in the knowledge of that same, right? You can't bring people anywhere if you're not there yourself in your mind, right? You can't bring people into the knowledge of Christ unless you're going in the same direction, unless you yourself also are following Christ into what is his, right? Joshua could not lead the people into that land, right, unless he himself was strong in heart, right? But again, by the same token, we need to be people that are careful, right? When you are not strong in a certain area, right? Just because it is true that all things are lawful unto you, but all things are not profitable unto you, so then you need to be careful the things that you do, right? It doesn't mean that you need to guard your actions, but when your mind, right, is not where it needs to be, there are certain precautions sometimes that you need to take because your mind is not at the state where it should be, right? Jesus, sure he did. Jesus ministered to the prostitutes and Jesus ministered to the tax collectors, but sometimes people are not in the state of mind where they are able to minister. So what do? You continue to hear, you continue to grow, right? But you take certain precautions because you recognize, you know what? I'm not at a place yet where you could where you can make certain decisions. You're not at a place where you can always make, very good judgment, right? So when you don't have that judgment, then you hang around people that can constantly encourage you, right? You have to be careful then being around other people where you can't be a help to necessarily, right? Because of what? Because of the strength of heart, where you are. So you can, out of all of the knowledge that we have of Jesus, if we are saved, there are definite ways that we can help other people. But even the Lord himself cautioned us and said, right, that we that are spiritual should restore others, right? But to be careful that we ourselves don't fall into the same stuff, right? And that's even with believers, right? That's even just talking about just believers, right? That we need to be cautious and take certain precautions with. The more mature you are, right, the less moved you will be by things around you, right? The more mature you are in mind, we're not talking about age at all, right? We're talking about strong in heart. When Jesus talked, and I think Pastor Mike used the example today about the disciples being in the boat with Jesus, he says, do you have no faith, right? Because there was a commotion, right? Because of the fact that they were sinking and Jesus is sleeping, and they basically came to him and said, don't you care that we're sinking? Don't you care about what's happening to us? Obviously that shows immaturity. That shows a heart that is not very strong in the Lord, right? And in the power of his might. People that have not really allowed the knowledge of Christ to affect their judgment, to affect the way they think, a mind that needs to still be renewed. It doesn't mean that you're not growing, right? It doesn't mean that you're not growing. It just means, you know what? The fellowship with believers will do you good, right? Listening to people, right? And I'll emphasize that again, right? Listening to people that love you and that know the Lord, right, is more profitable to you than listening to anybody else, right? Being strong in the Lord, right? Every single one of us, we were talking about this last week or the week before, right? That, it's so profitable for us to be around one another. But sometimes you recognize that, you're still growing in lots of things because it's easy for us in this atmosphere, right? It's easy for us to be very agreeable, and that everyone just wants the best for you, but it's a different ball game, right? When you're surrounded by people, right, that are not encouraging you in the Lord at all. So that just in itself is something to be cautious about. Being in an atmosphere or in an environment where no one knows the Lord and no one is encouraging you in the Lord at all, So that means that if no one is encouraging you at all in the Lord, right? If you are not strong in heart, that environment could do the exact opposite to you, right? That environment could do the exact opposite to you. So we need to take care, right? To allow others to encourage you in the Lord, others to help you so that your heart is strengthened, and also you yourself seeking after the Lord, being able to take the opportunities, right? And if you even judge the way, look at the way the way our services run, right? Look at our services and look at our website. And I know that may seem like a weird thing to bring up in the middle of a message, but it's not, right? Look at the way things are available to you. You can come in here pre-service and you hear the gospel. You can come in here during song service and you hear the gospel. You can come in here during the message and you hear the gospel. You can go to almost any single part, any page on our website, and you can be encouraged in the gospel one way or the other. So in other words, things that are available to you like that are not just flippant little things that don't even matter. Like going on the reforminus.com website is the same thing as going on the Fox News website. It's not the same thing, right? They are not the same thing. They are not to be used the same way, right? Most websites that you have access to on the internet do nothing at all to encourage you in the Lord. Nothing at all to encourage you in the Lord. And the majority of us use our liberties, right, to access more of that garbage than we do the things that actually profit us, right? In other words, listen to immaturity, right? And believe me, I have not only done it, but I'm there right now in that immaturity, right? I'm there right now, right? That we spend more time on websites that do nothing to profit you than we do on websites that profit you, right? It would be the same thing as saying that you spend more time talking to people that don't profit you than people that do profit you, right? If we have acquaintances and people that we allow to speak into our lives that don't profit us at all compared to those around us that actually do profit us, do you see how you can quickly see how your maturity level in so many different areas? If you're willing to spend more time on the internet doing things and looking at stuff and listening to things and reading things that don't profit you at all versus things that will profit you, right? That's an issue. That's something that in other words, that's like little alarm bells should go off in your mind, right? Like it is obviously, and no, this is very simple, right? Simple little thing. It is better for us to be surrounded by people and surrounded by, we're speaking about the internet, so websites or content, right, that profits you. If you look at your music library, right, look at your music library. The majority of the stuff that you listen to, is it stuff that profits you nothing or stuff that profits you little? And I say that because there's very few songs that profit you in a good way, right? The majority of songs profit you a little bit, or they don't profit you at all. So what do you spend most of your time reading? Things that profit you nothing, or things that profit you some or a lot, right? Do you spend your time listening to things that profit you nothing? Or do you spend your time listening to things that profit you some? Listen, I know that may seem really like these, what are you talking about, Pastor Jose, about websites and about things that I read in the internet? But that's what's in your brain. That's what's going into your brain, right? That's what's going in there. That's why the Apostle Paul was praying that you would receive the spirit of wisdom and revelation and knowledge of him. Maybe to those people that have faith in Jesus, that was and I think he does say it in Ephesians chapter 1, having heard of their faith in the Lord Jesus, he says to them that they would receive the spirit of wisdom and revelation and knowledge of him. But he says that to them obviously because the only way for people to be strong of heart, right, is for the majority of what they receive, the majority of what they're receiving to be things that are profitable to them. And it doesn't mean that, hanging out with people that aren't saved, reading things that have nothing, that don't profit you, right? In other words, I read sometimes things or listen to things also that are just things about technology that profits me in the Lord in nothing. Absolutely in nothing does it profit me at all. In nothing, right? But when the majority of what you listen to is that, right? Then, in other words, that's what your mind is going to be full of. That's what's going to be abounding in our hearts, right? That's what's going to make the difference to you when something happens between reacting appropriately or inappropriately, right? That's what's going to affect you between knowing what to do tomorrow and knowing what not to do, knowing what to accept and knowing what not to accept, knowing what is the truth and what is not the truth. Listen, a lot of times when people are confused in their mind, it's interesting that the first thing that they discount is Jesus, right? In other words, when they get a taste of the world, then you know what? Maybe I was never actually really saved at all, right? In other words, they hear so much garbage in the world that they begin to doubt the only thing that was actually profiting them in the world, right? The only thing that was actually profiting them, which was the truth about Jesus Christ, the minute that they get into the world, they begin to doubt the very thing that was the only thing that was helping them. But why? Because the things that they're getting in such abundance in the world begin to overpower. In other words, the cares of this world, the lust for the things thereof, the knowledge that is in this world, right, is what is in abundance in your mind. So what do we think, or what would we expect would be the thing that shoots out of your mouth? Well, the thing that's shooting out of your mouth is the very thing that's been filling your mind and your heart. But when the Lord says that we should meditate on the Word of God day and night, what do we think that means? Like, what do you think you're being encouraged in? When the Lord tells you to meditate on His Word day and night, He's saying within the scope of your day, what is profitable for you is that the majority of what you think on is that which profits you. Which obviously the only one that profits us is Christ. The only one that profits us is Christ in another believer, or the only one that profits us is Christ in us, right? So he says that should be the scope of our day. Like when you look at your day, you should think, in my mind, the majority of my day should be that which profits me, right? And then when you hear something that's not profitable, it doesn't sway you. You discern it for what it is, right? Instead of allowing yourself to hear something in the world and it just confuses you now. Oh, that contradicts what I had heard in church, or that contradicts what so-and-so told me, right? That contradicts what my family is telling me. That contradicts what my wife is telling me, right? And when things contradict, right, what people around you that do know the Lord, when things that you're hearing contradict that and it causes you to be confused, that means that you're actually giving credence to that thing. In other words, when people are confused, it's because they're giving the same weight to two thoughts or more, right? When you give equal weight to two thoughts, that causes confusion. You know why? Because you say A, B, I don't know, I'm so confused. A, B, I don't know, I'm so confused. When it should be clear. A, B should be A, right? It should be so clear, right? When things are not that clear, they cause confusion. Why? Because we have an abundance of things in our mind that don't need to be there. So what do? We give access then to the Lord who's on the inside of us, to the God who we belong to the one who is our God and to whom we belong to. Give Him free reign and access. I mean, in other words, as freely as we give websites and the internet free access into our mind. Like, in other words, we allow free, unhindered access to so much stuff in our mind. In other words, listen, computers computer systems in this age have a better system to guard themselves than our minds do. Because at least computers have firewalls, right? Where certain things they don't allow. But so many times in our mind, you know what? We're just like little children. We just allow everything, complete full access and reign into our mind. Just give me everything you got. Like it doesn't matter. And that's our mentality, right? Oh, it really doesn't matter. It's just information. It really doesn't matter. It's just the internet. It really doesn't matter. It's just a game. It really doesn't matter. It's just this. It really doesn't matter. It's just that, right? But when we give things just such full access like that, that's where our thoughts will abound, is where we're residing, where we're living, the thing that we're allowing such free access into our mind. But when you allow the glory that is on the inside of you to strengthen your heart, right? When you allow the people that are around you that care about you to be able to speak that to you, which is good, right? And I know, there are so many times when people that love you speak things that are true to you, but it seems like instead of speaking speaking to help you, you interpret it as a threatening thing that they're telling you, when in actuality it's not threatening at all. People are just trying to help you, so therefore they're speaking truth. They're not trying to put you down. They're not trying to tell you that you're a child. They're not trying to treat you like you don't know anything. It's just we need to be able to, and listen, I understand that correction many times, we interpret it as a painful thing. We interpret it as, oh, you're just trying to hurt me. You're just trying to put me down. You just don't understand me, right? But what the thing to do is to be able to really break down and see, what is it that someone is telling you? Are they speaking to you truth about Jesus and the things that you have and the things that you possess? Right? Or are they speaking to you, right, things that are just really actually to put you down, to demean you? Sometimes people say things like that to put you down. Sometimes people can speak things to you just to demean you, to put you down. But when it comes to the church, right, the people within the church, the majority of the time, people that are going to speak to you are going to speak to you things that are truths about the Lord, right? Things that are truths about what you possess and what you have. You know, there are so many people that run to the health community that's out there, that run to psychiatrists, that run to so many people. And a lot of what we receive from this world is not really physical help and assistance at the time. In other words, that help many times comes with a ton of doctrine, with a ton of opinion, with a ton of sayings, right, that we need to be able to interpret correctly, right? Because we're in this world, and the only way that we can be kept in this world and kept successfully in this world is to allow the Lord to make us strong in our mind and in our heart, right? That's the only way that we can be kept in this world, is by allowing the Lord to keep us strong in heart. And then you know what? Then it doesn't matter whether you work in the world or work in the church, right? A lot of times people want to escape employment in the world because they figure, if I work in the church, then that way, you know, it could be a better atmosphere for me. And granted, that is probably true, right? That working within a church organization is a better atmosphere many times than working in the world. But believe me, I have worked in the church and on staff at other churches for years, right? And just as there are problems and disagreements outside of the church, so there are problems and disagreements within the church. But we need to be able to be people, right, that can be corrected. We need to be able to be people that allow others and the Lord in us, allow the Lord in other people, and allow the Lord within us to be able to correct our thinking, right? Without us looking at it as being threatening towards us, but allowing it to be something that profits us, right? Allowing something to be that which profits us. That's very good. That's very good. He says, we were in Ephesians chapter 1, right? Ephesians chapter 1 and verse number 18. It says, the eyes of your understanding being enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of his calling and what the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints. In other words, that you would be able to know what's in you. That you would be able to know what's in you. And the way that you get to know what's in you, it's allowing him who is in you, right, to teach your mind, right? In other words, you're looking inside of yourself to allow him who is in you to teach you what is in you, right? To teach you who he's made you. What we're allowing is the new creation that we have been made to make our mind new according to that same newness. That the newness that you have in here is the newness that you'll have here, right? The newness that you have here is the newness that you have here. And I know, I don't know how correct this is, but I've been thinking about it for a few days about like the Lord glorifying your mind, right? And I don't know if that is biblically correct, right? But it just makes so much sense in my mind, because if I've been glorified. In other words, I have received the glory of God in me. My body has not been glorified yet fully, right? But my mind can receive that glory. My mind can receive the glory that is in me. My mind can receive that glory, right? Just like the earth will receive the glory of the Lord, right? So my mind receives that glory. So it's just such a cool thing to be able to see how you're seeing the inheritance that is in all of us, right? You're seeing the glory that is in all of us. And when you continually behold the glory that is on the inside of us, when you continually behold the glory of God that is in you, as you behold Jesus on the inside of you, as you behold the glory of him that is in you, right? You understand then, right, the inheritance that you have. You begin to understand the inheritance that is in the saints, and therefore then your sight, your eyes are lit, right? He says, what the riches of the glories of it is inheritance in the saints, verse 19, and what is the exceeding greatness of his power toward us who believe. That's the glory of God being manifest. It says the greatness of the power that is toward us who believe. Right, that you begin to see that there is the power that is in you, right, and the enlightenment of your mind cause that power in you to be able to work effectually outwardly, right, to work effectively outwardly, right. In John, let's go to John real quick. John chapter 14 and verse number 19. A little while longer and the world will see me no more, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live also, right? Isn't that cool? That along with seeing is life, right? We will see him and we will have his life, right? But it's interesting. It's not just any seeing, is that when the one that you're seeing is him, right? Then you receive light. Didn't I tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God, right? If you believe, you see, who is it that you're believing? The one that you're seeing. Who is it that you're seeing? Christ, right? Right? The one that you're seeing is Christ in you. When the one that you're seeing is Christ, then the glory that you see is the glory of God, which is the glory that you have on the inside of you, right? You're essentially seeing who you are. You're essentially seeing what's on the inside of you. That's why obviously as you behold the glory of God, you're beholding the glory of God as in a mirror, right? Because the glory that you're seeing is the glory of God, whose glory you possess on the inside of you. He says, you will see me no more. The world will see me no more, but you will see me. Because I live, you will live also. At that day, you will know that I am in the Father, you're in me, and I'm in you, right? So that glory is on the inside of you. The God that you're seeing is the God that dwells in you. And Paul was saying before, he desires that God will dwell in your heart. In other words, not that he would dwell in you. Christ dwells in the inside of every believer, but that Christ would also dwell in your heart and mind. That glory that is in you would also glorify your mind. That the light that is in you would also light your mind, right? That just as it is in you, so should be in that it would be in your mind. That the same way that the will of God is on the inside of you, the soul, the will of God is done in your mind and heart. I know that people talk about the will of God as always being a physical thing, the will of God being done outwardly, but God has a will for your mind, right? God has a desire for your mind, and his desire for your mind is that it would be enlightened, that any darkness that is there would receive light, right? And that the darkness then would scatter, that your mind would be clear, that your mind would be, this may seem a little odd, but I am going to tell you this quick little story. There have been a lot of times in my life where problems that are just normal things that the world suffers from, right? Things that just occur, things that seem serious, right? In your family, things that, concern people in the world, that something like that would be happening or occurring or be an ongoing thing in my life or in my home. And the thing I noticed for some reason is like you would even just go outside to sit outside just on the stoop and just look outside, and things just don't appear right. And like things just don't seem correct. Like it's almost like it's a difference between, going to the beach and being happy in your mind, and in your mind everything feels like it's good and you're just enjoying yourself and enjoying the company. And you could go to the same beach and go to the same place and have a real concern in your mind. You can't even enjoy yourself. The things around you just don't seem the same. And I remember a couple times praying like, Lord, I want to be able to just see things clearly on the outside. Like, Lord, why do things don't seem enjoyable? But what I wasn't really understanding is that it wasn't that everything around me was wrong. It wasn't that everything around me was negative. It's just that just my thinking, when your thinking is not right, when you're thinking about the Lord is not correct, things outside don't seem correctly, right? Like you don't perceive circumstances, you don't receive places, you don't even live in the moment. The Lord can't just speak to you, and you can encourage someone, or you can receive encouragement where you can just fellowship with another believer and just talk about things that are awesome in the Lord, right? And you can encourage one another back and forth. But when we allow problems and just stuff in this world to just cloud your mind, your sight is cloudy like that. When you see things, you begin to see things as being absent from you. You begin to see qualities of the Lord being absent from your life at that moment. And the Lord says that when you see that these things are not present, that it's just that you're being short-sighted, even to blindness, that your heart is not strong. In other words, that our mind is weakened by whatever situation it is, and you're not being strong in heart, right? We're not thinking clearly, but instead our heart is not strong, and our heart is moved. Our heart is literally moved away from the gospel. We talked about this as like playing the harlot in our thoughts and in our minds. But when we allow the thoughts in our minds, in other words, that the way that we deal with things is by distraction, right? Listen, we live in a world where they tell you the way to cope with problems is just to isolate yourself, to throw yourself into social media, to throw yourself into video games, to throw yourself into a different reality within your mind, right? To be able, listen, where people are desiring to go is where they can just put something over their eyes, right? When they can put a headset or a virtual reality thing and be able to step out of their present circumstance and be able to step into a world where their problems don't exist, where they don't look the way they look, where they can dress in a way that they can't maybe afford to dress in this life, where they can just bring themselves out of the reality that they're in and into some other reality. But isn't that translation, right, something that the Lord has already afforded and given to us, right, where we don't have to cope with life by trying to escape, by trying to look at something else, by distracting ourselves with TV or distracting ourselves with these other things, but instead allow the Lord to be able to distract your mind to the reality that is actually already yours, that you possess, right? That you don't have to distract yourself with binging on some kind of thing and watching 100 episodes of something, so you don't have to actually think about what's going on, but that you can actually have that problem face you dead center right in front of your face, and you can discern it properly by the Lord and know exactly what it is. Know that problem's been fixed. Knowing that the Lord has already provided all that you need on the inside of you. Knowing that you possess the power to wealth on the inside of you, so that no lack that you see is without already provision. Knowing that no sickness or disease that is trying to affect your body, that you have come short of any glory on the inside of you to already heal and make that well, right? That we already have those things in us, that we already have a way of escape. We already possess on the inside of us the way of escape, because we have already escaped, right? Now, in our mind, we may not already escape, but the reality of what Christ has done in us already, that we have already been removed and set out of reach of this world, right? That we already have been set above this world. But when our mind is not where we are, right? Then that's where Paul is praying. He says that you would receive the spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of him. In other words, that what's in you would move up, right? We have a wallpaper on our extras page on our website. If you're on the homepage and just scroll down and you go to extras, it's a picture of a man with his head up, and he has 12 candlesticks, right? 12 candelabras, 6 on each side of his chest here, and then lines the color of gold that go up to his eyes. All 6 of them on either side go up to his. And I have kept that wallpaper. I may change my wallpaper on my phone and on my iPad every once in a while, and I revert right back to that one, right? And it's there's a verse on there that's written out of 2 Chronicles. I forget the exact chapter. I don't know if it's chapter 3 or chapter 5 or 7. I don't remember. But it's out of 2 Chronicles. But it's so good to be, because I like that, because it reminds me that what is in me already is what I need to lighten my eyes and my heart, right? That the light that was in the temple is that light that needed to shine into the holiest of all, right? And it's just an interesting thing when you begin to see that you have this light on the inside of you that God desires to light up with the same light that's already in you, right? Light up your mind and your heart, right? That when he says that the light that is in you, right, that he desires to enlighten the eyes of your understanding, right? So just as you have light here, so you would have light here, right? That the same light, the same glory that's in you here is the same glory that would move up into your mind. Then you would find yourself strong. You would find yourself courageous, very brave, right? Very, very confident in the way that you speak, very confident in the way that you act before each and every circumstance in your day, right? Each and every circumstance in your day. So it's a cool thing to know, you know what, we don't have to use the things of the world as an escape tactic for us to be able to deal with the things of every day, but that we have already been given that escape. And the Lord desires to remind you and teach you of how you have escaped and how you have already been set apart from this world and everything that you already have, so that you would see yourself very equipped, right? He said, and I'm going to see if I can find it for you here very, very quickly. It's in 2 Chronicles, if we can go there real quick, 2 Chronicles 32. 2 Chronicles 32 and verse number 7. He says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid nor dismayed. And this is New King James. Strong and courageous, or strong and brave. Do not be afraid nor dismayed before the king of Assyria, nor before all the multitude that is with him. For there are more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God to help us and to fight our battles. And the people were strengthened by the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah, right? But you see how different that is. It's not just that, you know, that words have the ability to strengthen, right? But it's that it is the truth, right? Listen, there is a certain amount of encouragement that you can get from people that can lie to you, right? Like, you can be encouraged somewhat from somebody telling you, don't worry, it's going to be okay, when in actuality it's not going to be okay, and it's not okay, right? If you don't have the Lord and somebody is telling you that it's okay, don't worry, well, it's not okay, right? There should be concern there, right? Because you don't have the Lord, and the way that this world works is by sin and then death, right? So things tend to not get better but get worse, right, in the world. But when you hear someone tell you the truth, when you hear a Christian or someone that has the Spirit of God speak truth to you, and them tell you in the face of an actual battle, in the face of actual people coming to kill you, he says to them, he says, don't worry and don't be afraid, because with them is the arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord God Almighty. In other words, he just wanted them to clearly see. Hezekiah was just telling them, he said, see clearly, because this is the truth. What's with them compared to what we have is nothing, right? I think it was Elijah that told his servant the same thing. More are those that are with us than are with them, right? In other words, these are not things just to encourage us with lies, right? But this is the Lord speaking to us truth, right? When we allow just temporal things in the world to distract us, listen, the answer to the problems in our lives are not a vacation, right? Sometimes people flee to another part of a state, or they flee to another part of the world just to be able to escape their present circumstances. But guess what? When you come back, you're going to find that things are just as they were before you left, right? But that escapism mentality does not profit you in any way. But to be able to have an escapism mentality that understands that the Lord is your escape, right? To be able to allow the Lord to really strengthen you, to know that if you didn't have a TV around, to know that if you were lacking everything, if you had no food and you were out in the middle of a wilderness with nothing for 40 days and 40 nights and found no McDonald's and no money and no help and nobody around you, right? But that just the Lord speaking truth to you, right, is enough for you to be able to find a way of escape. In other words, if the present reality was that you had nothing and had no one in the middle of nowhere, Right? The reality of that is that Jesus knew as he went out and was tempted of the devil, even though he was so-called by himself, which he was not, right? Right? Because he knew the Lord is with me. I may be out here, but I am not alone, right? The Lord is with me, and all you're coming to me with, Satan, is with an arm of flesh, right? That's all that you're coming with me is with untruths and with lies. But he had on the inside of him, right, the voice of his Father speaking truth to him. How could he fall into temptation, right? How could he fall into temptation when he's correctly discerning lies and the truth is in me? Everything you're telling me is a lie. Everything you're telling me is a lie, and everything God is speaking to me is truth. You see how important it is to be able to discern between the things that people tell you, even well-meaning people in the world. The motive of someone in the world does not dictate the truth of what they're saying, right? The motive of someone in the world is just their motive. And what they could be saying is something completely unprofitable to you, right? Completely unprofitable to you, right? It's a good way to be able to know the truth between that which is right and that which is wrong, right? Let me just show you one last thing, and then we're going to close here. Acts chapter 26. And verse number 18. He says, to open their eyes, this is out of the New King James, to open their eyes in order to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who are sanctified by faith in me. He says to turn them from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to God. So do you see, though, that darkness that exists in the mind of a Christian, right? That darkness is not of God. That darkness is not the intent of God to leave it dark, right? Any confusion that you ever feel, God is never inclined to leave you in that confusion. It is never the will of God for you to put the same weight on a thought that is of the world and a thought that is of God and to not know the difference, right? Confusion when you see a thought of the world and the thought of God, right? It's never, ever, ever the desire of God to leave you in that confusion and for you not to be able to discern the truth between one and the other. And you know what? If you're in a situation right now that you say, you know what, I have just been thinking like this. I know that I haven't been thinking right, but I just don't know the difference between this and this. Then ask someone for help, right? Ask someone and say, you know what, I've been confused about this. I want to ask you this. I want you to pray for me. I want you to pray with me, right? I want you to hear this out that I've been thinking about and help me see that, right? That it is so profitable for us when we do that, right? So profitable when you feel confused to ask a question, right? A lot of times you hear, I think I do it probably very seldom, right? But Pastor Mike a lot of times will ask, does anyone have a question? And I get it. The majority of the time, people, even if they have a question, sometimes they don't want to ask. Because I think a lot of times that's probably just earthly thinking, right? That when you're in a group of people and somebody says, does anybody have a question? Even if you had a question, normally people don't want to raise their hand. Because of either they want to leave, right? Or they don't want to ask because they don't want to be the only ones with a question, or don't want anybody else to think, oh, that was a dumb question, right? They don't want to be told in front of a bunch of people, well, I just kind of said that and you didn't listen, right? And obviously that's not the way that ever a question would be answered here in this church. But having a question and asking that question is never unprofitable, right? In an atmosphere like this, it's always helpful. I'm not saying obviously that if you have something personal and you have a question to ask that you have to ask it in front of a bunch of people, but I will encourage us again, right? Encourage you again because it is so profitable. When you have a question about something, listen, let me tell you this. I already know that you don't know everything. And you already know I don't know everything. So we can cut that, right? I already know you don't know everything. So if you were thinking that I thought you knew everything, I know you don't. And when you ask a question, it doesn't surprise me. And if I were to ask you a question, it shouldn't surprise you, right? Because I don't know everything. So I don't know everything and you don't know everything. So asking a question is never, ever unprofitable. It's never unprofitable, right? Sometimes, depending on who you ask, right? If you ask a doctor, do I have to die? And that doctor is not educated in the Lord, that's a dumb question, right? That's not a good question for you to ask, right? You should be asking somebody else. So the question is not dumb. I should take that back. The question is not dumb. The person that you're asking is not good, right? In other words, you should ask the right question to the right people, right? If you have a question about auto mechanics, right?
Asking an auto mechanic is probably a good thing. Asking someone who knows nothing about cars is probably not a good thing. Asking a question about life or death, you probably want to ask the Lord that, right? Not someone who is educated in the world. Anyone who is educated in the world and not educated in Jesus believes in death. They believe in death and they believe it has to happen. So to ask someone in the world if this is terminal, of course it is, right? Your very carnal existence is terminal, right? But not with the Lord, right? With the Lord, our existence is no longer terminal, right? We have received everlasting life. We have received a life on the inside of us that can and should profit our mortal body, right? So asking a question, asking people to pray for you. Again, and please don't allow the fact that I just mentioned this to be a deterrent for you that had a question today, because I don't want it now to seem, I'm trying to cover all my bases here, right? To try to make it seem now, well, you're not going to ask because you don't want it to seem like the only reason you did it is because I just said that, right? When you have something to ask someone, ask it, right? Ask it and allow yourself to be helped, right? Now probably just by design, I'm probably one of those people, right? That when you're in a room and you want to leave the training session, I'm the one that always has my hand up and I'm going to ask a question because I want to know. I'm just inquisitive that way. When you say something and I don't have the foggiest idea what the heck you're talking about, most of the time I'm going to ask you, like, what does that mean, right? And sometimes it's because I wasn't paying attention. Other times it's because I actually really want to know and didn't understand what you said. But to ask a question is always a good thing, right? To ask someone to pray for you when things are not good, when you don't feel well, it is always profitable.
We hope you enjoyed this message from Reformed Church. If you have, please share this with someone else and help us get this unpopular message to the world. If you'd like to support Reformed Church, you can do so at reforminus.com/give. Also on our website, you can take advantage of our free messages, articles, and even full discipleship courses. Start reforming your mind now at reforminus.com.